Hello and welcome back to the Take 10 texture class. Today I'm going to be using texture to accentuate a very minimalist project that uses a lot of white and not very much embellishment at all. So let's get started. To begin with, I'm going to show you the photo that I'm using. This photo has been modified with an app, and I'm going to show you this app in a separate video. The app is called Tangent, and it just allows you to apply filters to your photo, a lot like Instagram, but also you can put these really cool shapes and on your pictures, and I really like how that looks. So I also have a piece of black netting here that a package of cheese came in, and I have these really beautiful thickers from Dear Lizzy. It's called Petals, and I thought that that font would really look nice with my idea for this layout. Now, most of the time I don't have a sense of what I want to do with a layout until I sit down and get started. But in this case, I knew I wanted to use black and white and maybe a hit of pastel color. And so I'm going to be drawing from my Felicity Jane kit for that reason. Now, I'm just showing you these embossing folders. If you're not familiar with them, a lot of different companies make them. And on one side, there's a recessed pattern, and on the other side there is a bumpy pattern, and then they fit together, and then you put your paper inside of it and run it through your die cut machine, and the die cut machine squeezes the paper into the little ridges of the embossing folder, and you end up with a beautifully embossed piece of paper. And it works on paper and cardstock and a whole bunch of different items. It even works on thin chipboard. So I am going to use, at first I was thinking that I'd like to use a star. I thought it kind of had a bit of a nautical theme, so I was going to use a star embossing folder, but then I saw that one with the hexagon that it just kind of picks up on the hexagon pattern that's already, there's the star one I was going to use. And so I'm thinking I still might go back to that star idea, so I'm taking it out just in case. But I really like how the hexagon picks up on the hexagon pattern that's already in the photo. And I like to, when I'm using a photo with a really artsy kind of effect on it like this, I like to make my layout be fairly plain when I'm using an artsy photo, like either a beautifully taken photo that my husband has created, he's a photographer, or something that I've done when I was playing around. So there you get to see how beautiful that paper is after it's been run through my Big Shot with the embossing folder. And you can use any embossing machine that you have, so you could use a Cuttlebug or a Grand Caliber or whatever it is that you have, as long as the folder can fit through it. And I use tab 2 for my multi-purpose platform. And now I was thinking, because I want to add texture to this, I was thinking about using this wood grain textured paper, but I thought that might be just a little bit too much. There is a lot of wood on a boat, so I was sort of thinking about picking up on that idea, but I just thought that would be overboard. So I decided to go with a flat paper, white cardstock background that it doesn't have any texture at all on it. And what that will do is it will help the texture that I do add to this project really stand out. So I have the embossing folder there, like not the embossing folder, but the paper that is embossed with the hexagons. And now I'm just trimming down that little net, the black netting that the cheese came in. And I'm going to use that as an embellishment that adds even more texture. And at this point, I'm just thinking about composition here. And I'm really just working with what I've got. So the embossing folder makes a piece of paper that size and shape. So I'm just working with what I have there and figuring out how I might want to put the netting on it. So I know that I want to add a bit of color somewhere on this layout, and I'm thinking about picking up on the blue that's in the photo. I don't want to use pink because this is a layout about a boy. And this is my international student from Germany who's with us for the year. And so this polka dot periwinkle type of color, even though it's not the same color blue that's in the photo, I still really like how it looks with this, so I'm going to go for it anyways. If you prefer to match your photos to your pattern paper, then you could easily just have a look around in your stash for something that was a better match. But I just decided to go with what I had on hand, and I kind of like how there are just different shades of blue. I did pull out a piece of the packaging from the Felicity Jane kit, and I'm thinking about using it as another way to add texture. And I'm not going to use it on this layout, but I'm thinking about still using it on another project. So while I was doing that, I thought, well, instead of using that packaging, like the shredded packaging, I thought maybe just to add a little bit more black and white. Because so far the only black element that I really have is the black netting. I thought I would fold up a piece of the tissue paper that came in the kit, and I folded it up fairly messy. And I wanted the edges to be kind of bent and look just very natural. So I just folded it the way that it naturally folded, and then I cut it around, as you saw. I stapled it right to the netting so that the netting could first of all, because regular adhesive would probably not hold that netting in place, but also I wanted it to just look casual, like it was peeking out. I didn't want it stuck to any part other than the middle of that tissue paper. Then I just used some regular adhesive, just my dot runner from scrapbook adhesives, I think it's called. And now I'm just fussy cutting around one of the tags that came in the Felicity Jane kit, another hit of black and white that I'm adding to this. And even though it's on sticker paper, I'm using my scrapbooking adhesive to stick it down. Because I want it to lift. I don't want it to stick to what's behind it. I'm going to use some lift in this project because it's going to be very minimalist. I want there to be some shadows and definition between my layers. I'm still flirting with the idea of using that little shredded piece of crumpled up paper. I really like the texture that it adds, but I'm a little hesitant to use more than a couple of bits of what ends up being garbage on my project. So I'm flirting with the idea, but I haven't quite done it yet. Now I do repackage all of my thickers into my own 12 by 6 inch bags, and that just allows me to easily slip them in and out without having to fuss with the really tight packaging that they come in. That's completely optional. You don't have to do it. It's just my own preference. And if you are interested in that, I have a video that shows how I do that, but you would have just seen it right there anyways. So now I'm taking those thickers and I'm just arranging them so that they're on the hexagon embossed paper. And then you see that I took that one little square and I made it look like it's a big long strip by just cutting it in half, and I adhered it at the top and I adhered it at the bottom. And now what I'm doing is I'm doing some messy stitching along the edge that has that tab. And so I just stitched and then used my reverse stitch and then stitched again. And I'm going to do the same right through the letters in the word sail and the exclamation point as well. And I added the exclamation point because the whole time I'm making this, I'm thinking of that AWOL Nation song, Sail. And it's kind of like it has an exclamation point. I don't know if the song does, but it should. So anyhow, I'm leaving the threads hanging on this. That is just another way to add a little bit of texture, especially in a white on white layout like this one. This one has a lot more white than I usually use. Now, when you're using lots of textured pieces, sometimes you have to use more sturdy adhesive. And so I'm using Score tape, which is made by Sook Wang. And it's super duper heavy double-sided tape. And so that will hold that netting down to the background piece a lot more with a lot more firmness. I do want to embellish this very, very minimally. So I took the little sunshine sticker and a little tiny heart puffy sticker. Those both came in the Felicity Jane kit. And I just put them in those two places. And now I'm just going to bend up all of the horizontal lines on this layout. So the paper on the top and the bottom, that patterned dotted paper, and also the hexagon paper, I just pulled it, kind of rolled it back with my fingers just to provide a little bit of lift definition of those edges, and it also casts a bit of a gray shadow on it. So Most of this layout is actually done, believe it or not. It came together super duper fast. That's one of the things I love about doing a minimalist page. I don't do them very often. It's not really part of my normal style, but I do like to throw one into my album every once in a while, especially when I'm working with an artsy photo like this. This photo doesn't really have much of a story to it. It's just a neat picture I took. I think he looks fabulous in this picture, and I just love the color, and it just reminds me of that day. And so I used my ruler there to make some very faint lines with my pencil, and then I'm fussy cutting around this banner that also came on the sticker sheet from Felicity Jane. And I'm using a fine point Faber-Castell Pitt pen, and I'm just writing my journaling. You can read it right there. It says Pascal takes the wheel on David and Heather's boat, Chester Basin, Nova Scotia, and I'm going to put the date on that little banner. Now I'm taking my white eraser and I'm just erasing very gently. I don't want to pull up any of the fiber in the paper, so I just basically use the weight of the eraser, and I just go over it over and over and over again until the pencil lines are completely gone. And now I noticed that there was a bit of a mark on the paper that you can't actually see it in the video, but I could see it. So I just used my eraser to erase that right off too. It was just sitting on the surface of the paper. I'm not sure what it came from. So I decide to put that banner under my journaling instead of over it, and I'm looking at my roller date phrase, not my roller date stamps, but my roller phrase stamps, and I picked a stamp from Chamel. It says "See the World," and I thought it was appropriate. It looks like he's, sailing on the big ocean. The Chester Basin is attached to the ocean, but it's pretty sheltered. But I thought it was kind of an appropriate phrase. I'm using basic gray ink from Stampin' Up!, and my pad is almost run out. I need to get some re-inker for that. And so it does stamp very faintly, but I actually like that look in this particular situation. Now I'm going to reluctantly use my We Are Memory Keepers staple board. I find this works very well for stapling in the middle of your page where your other stapler won't reach. However, I do find that it's a bit of a lot of work. As you see, it works fine. It's stapled exactly where I wanted it to staple, and so it's great. I just find it a bit of a pain to use, and I don't really enjoy it, but it does get the job done, and so I'm happy about that. And I guess I'm glad I have it. I'm not entirely sure if I could do it all over again if I would have bought that staple board, but anyhow, I did, and so I might as well use it, right? Now I want to add some splatter, and I want the splatter to look like it's coming out from behind my layers at where my photo is. And so I just removed my photo, and I'm going to splatter freely where the photo is and hope that some of it falls outside of where the photo and the papers are going to fall so that you can see some of it. And you'll see that I used Liquitex ink, and I'm going to show you at the end why I used Liquitex ink instead of my Heidi Swapp Color Shine in black, but I used Liquitex ink, but I did use the dropper. Like I used the mist bottle from Heidi Swapp just to get that nozzle, because I find that the nozzle gives me a much finer mist, like splattered look, than if I use the ink dropper that comes in the Liquitex ink. So I just keep an empty bottle of Heidi Swapp mist on my shelf, and then I just always make sure that I wipe it off with a baby wipe when I'm finished so that it's clean for the next time, so that I can use it for any color Liquitex ink that I might want to splatter. I will show you why I chose that instead of regular mist when I do my close-ups. So now I'm just adhering this so that it's not straight. I put it a little bit askew on purpose so that it has a bit more of a casual look. And I thought that this was the end, and I thought, see how I pulled up the edges there? I just thought I was going to outline it, and I thought, no, I think it needs a little something else. It's fine like this, but I have so few of these very white on white type of layouts that I feel like I need something to tie it in with the rest of the layouts that are in my album that just makes it look a little bit more the way that it's a little bit more like it blends in with my other style of making layouts. So what I've decided to do is actually mat it on another white piece of paper. And so I have a white piece of cardstock there, and you'll see I kind of did a bit of a switcheroo there. I had one piece of white cardstock picked out, but it had a bit of a blue hue to it, which really it was providing too much contrast around the outsides of my layout. I want the outside to be a very subtle addition of texture. So I just trimmed off about, I guess it would be about 1/8 of an inch all the way around my project. And I had to do that because it was already mounted, so I couldn't just take off 1/4 of an inch off two sides. And now I'm using my Tim Holtz distress tool, and this is a really wonderful tool for adding texture to your projects, because as you see, you just rub it. It has several different blades on it, so it will last a long time before it's dull, and you just rub it all along the edges of your paper, and it adds this really beautiful soft textured look and distressed look, and it really does wonderful things with the edges of your paper fibers. So now that I've done that, I am going to sew white on white thread all the way around the perimeter of this project. And you'll notice I keep checking my bobbin. I'm going to have a little peek every once in a while. See me peeking there? I know I'm going to run out of bobbin, and I'm thinking, oh, I hate refilling my bobbin. What am I going to do? And yeah, sure enough, it's going to run out right around there. So I'm thinking I can't really stop right now because I did about half of it. If I had done almost all of it, I could have just stopped and left a gap, and that might have looked really interesting. So I went ahead off camera and refilled my bobbin with white thread. And now when I picked up, I'll show you at the end when you see the photos, but when I picked it up, I actually left a bit of a gap where the sewing stops and then it picks up again. And that just adds, there it is right over there on the bottom left-hand side. That just adds a little bit more interest and texture. Again, with this white on white, you've got to do everything that you can to add some interest so it doesn't just become boring. And so I'm going to zoom in so that you can see how I use my We Are Memory Keepers brad tool. This is for closing and installing brads on your layouts. And I just use the edge of it to pull up the edges of my distressed papers. So first I'm going to show you just what the edges look like with that added distressed and sewn edge. I'm not adding any real contrast or color here. It's just the tone on tone white look with the little threads left in place, and you'll see where the interrupted sewing is right over here, right there. Where the bobbin ran out, and I just left it. I think that adds a little bit of character to this one. And yeah. So here you're also going to be able to see why I chose the Liquitex ink. I want you to take notice of the splatters and see how crisp they are and how perfect circles. I mean, they're splattery circles, so they're not exactly perfect, but the nice thing, and I got a couple of flicks of gold on there. I just left it. It doesn't really matter. I kind of like how that looks, actually. The Liquitex ink, it sits on top of your project instead of sinking in, and when the Heidi Swapp mist lands on pattern paper, it tends to soak right in, and it feathers out as it soaks into the paper, and so that gives you less defined circles of mist splats, and so this is just a different look, and I very much prefer it, especially for black splatter. I like my black splatter to be nice and crisp. So this is what I've switched to for the most part when I do my splatter. So here are the photos of this one. I tried to take photos that really emphasize how the texture looks on this one, because on a white on white minimalist type of project, the texture really does become all the more important. So you've got the texture here, lots of different substances. You've got puffy stickers, chipboard sticker, letter stickers, the embossed paper, the slightly shiny element that is on the tissue paper behind the photo, and then of course that beautiful netting from the cheese wrapper. And then some white threads hanging every here and there, and then the softness of that textured, distressed back edges on the layout as well. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the classroom.